Hey guys, how's it going? It's Daniel here, and thank you for checking out my newest video. This is the Saw franchise ranking. Been wanting to do a ranking for a little while now, and I couldn't really decide on whether to do the Saw films or the Chucky films, but I just went ahead and said I'll do the Saw films because I was listening to Raw by Hobson, and I just thought it was such a great album, and made me want to watch the Saw movies or rank them because it's been a while since I've watched some of these, but most of them are pretty fresh in my mind, so this ain't going to be too hard to rank them. I finally got all the films as of yesterday. I went out and bought the only one I didn't have in my collection yet. And so now I figured now is the perfect time to come and rank the films. So I'm gonna rank them from worst to best, and I'm gonna explain my reasons why. So my least favorite has got to be the final chapter. Um, this is the seventh one of the franchise, and hopefully it's the final one. There's talks about a part 8, which I'm really dreading. I hate the idea of another Saw film. I just think, it started off as a really cool premise, and it just kind of they really hammered it into the ground. I mean, it really just kind of became generic and not really interesting anymore, and they just kind of ruined it for me a little bit with how many movies they put out and a lot of them not being very good, and this one included. It just didn't feel like the ending that I had been wanting. It had a really cool twist ending towards the end, but it didn't really make much sense to me how. Well, okay, there's gonna be spoilers in this video, so just keep in mind about that. But it didn't really make sense to me because Dr. Gordon from the first film was revealed to be the final apprentice, the one to close out all of Jigsaw's work. It didn't really seem to make sense to me because in the first film, Jigsaw had his family abducted and held at gunpoint for hours, and in the end, uh, Dr. Gordon had to saw off his own foot to escape from Jigsaw. So why would he become the next apprentice? Like, why would he have any interest in Jigsaw in any way other than maybe to get revenge on him? It didn't really seem it didn't seem all that plausible. But it was cool to see him again. Um, some of the CGI effects in this movie were really terrible. I thought it was kind of silly how they were still using cassettes, even though this movie was released in 2011, I think. No, 2010. Only a year off. And they were still using cassettes, and it just, I don't know. It didn't feel like a Saw movie. It had kind of a... It had all the elements of a Saw film, but it just didn't feel like a Saw movie, and I hated all the characters. I didn't like a single character in this movie. I just wanted them all to die brutal deaths, and a lot of the traps in here were really forgettable. Um, I don't know. I've only seen Saw the Final Chapter once. I hate the movie. It's one of my least favorite horror films, and it was such a letdown coming after Saw 6, and Saw 6 was really good, and this was the final one of the franchise. It just kind of sucked. So I hate Saw the Final Chapter. It's my least favorite, and it's number 7 in the list. The next one is Saw 5. Now I only put this one above part 7, the final chapter, just by a hair, because this one had come off of Saw 4, and Saw 4 wasn't really good either, and so there really weren't that great of expectations for it. And plus, Saw the Final Chapter ended the whole series, and so the whole series kind of ended on a shitty note. So I guess that's why I put it below Saw 7, but as far as a film goes, Saw 5 was probably worse. Um, it didn't, again, a lot of the things didn't make a whole lot of sense. There were too many flashbacks in the movie. I felt that 50% of the movie was flashbacks. And also, it didn't really make sense, like, how Detective Hoffman became Jigsaw's apprentice. I think Jigsaw should have only had one apprentice. It should have just been Amanda. I think after that it just kind of got a little ridiculous, and it didn't seem to. It didn't really. I don't see how Jigsaw would. Okay, so Detective Hoffman, his sister was killed, and he killed. Detective Hoffman killed his sister's murderer, and made it look like a Jigsaw trap. Made it look like Jigsaw did the killing. And so John Kramer, Jigsaw, finds him and has. You would think that, like, the way he has him in the room, you would think he's going to set him up for a trap, like, to see, like a normal Jigsaw trap, but really it's not even a real trap. It's just something to scare him. And that doesn't sound like Jigsaw. Jigsaw would take him and put him in a trap to see, like, if he really valued life and if he really wanted to live, and to have him not only not do that, but to hire him on as his helper. That doesn't sound like Jigsaw. A lot of the characters were really unlikable. I couldn't identify with any of them, and they didn't really belong in a Jigsaw trap like that, where, because most of Jigsaw's victims, they cause harm to themselves and others intentionally. But these people really didn't, at least in my mind. But I don't know. Yeah, avoid this movie. Avoid both of these movies. And my number 5 is Saw 4. Yeah, avoid all of these films like the plague, because they're not good. A lot of people consider Saw 4 the worst, or Saw 5. And the only complaint I have with Saw 4 is it was really unnecessary. I think Saw 3 ended, and like after Saw 3, I feel like that should have just been the end of the franchise, because it really was a fitting ending. It was a good way to close out the series, and it would have been nice just to have them as a trilogy. But they drug it out, and they made it about more than just Jigsaw. It's not even about Jigsaw anymore. It's about his legacy and the fact that other people are carrying out his work for him now that he's gone. I don't like that whole aspect, and Saw 4 really is predicated on that. And some of the traps were really goofy. It didn't make sense to have those people in the traps because they had no place in a Saw film. They weren't really relevant to the story, and they're, oh my god, I don't know, Saw 4. It really is a shame that this movie had such terrible movies, but those are the only 3 bad ones. I think the rest of them are pretty solid entries. So next, I guess it's kind of a tough choice, but I'll go with part 6. And I just like this movie because I feel like it was such an improvement over 4 and 5, and it had one of my favorite traps. It had the carousel shotgun traps, and I felt like some of the characters were more likable in this movie. They actually, this felt like a return to form, kind of a mix between a prequel and a sequel to the Saw films, and it did it really well. I like the characters in this movie. I feel like they had a bit more substance to them, like unlike the 2 that came before it. And Saw 6 is one of the better ones in the franchise for that reason, and the fact that Saw the Final Chapter was such a letdown because of how good Saw 6 was, just makes Saw the Final Chapter look even worse. So part of the reason why Saw the Final Chapter is such a bad movie is because Saw 6 was pretty good, and like how good it was. So I didn't put it in my top 3 because I really only think the first 3 should have been made. Even part 6, I like the movie, I'm glad it was made, but if it wasn't made, I wouldn't really, not really sure I'd give a rat's ass, but I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad that it's canon, and it's a good movie, I enjoy it. Okay, my number 3 is Saw 3. This one is really all about Jigsaw. The first two really were about the other characters. This one is about Jigsaw and Amanda and all of the other people in this movie. You could take out the other characters completely, and the outcome of the movie would probably not be any different. Jigsaw would have died anyway. I think the only thing that, like, if you did take the characters out, and the only thing that may have actually not have happened was Amanda may not have died, maybe. But yeah, Jigsaw is on his deathbed in this movie, and so it really focuses on him and his relationship with Amanda, and it has a side story going on with what's their name? Dr. Lynn Denlin. I can't fucking. I just call her Dr. Lynn. I can't pronounce her last name for the life of me. And her estranged husband, Jeff. There we go. Played by Angus McFadden. If you've seen Braveheart, then you probably know who he is. And they do really good in this movie. And they were really good supporting characters, and I thought that their story kind of fit with the movie fairly well, even if it wasn't too key to the story. But whatever, that doesn't take away from the movie at all. I think it's still a really good movie, and it was a really good way to end out the trilogy. Just have Jigsaw be dead, and that be the end. I don't know. I felt like every single one that came out afterwards was pretty much cash grab, even though Part 6 was pretty entertaining, and a lot of people would agree. Now, my next favorite is Saw 2. And this one used to be my favorite, actually. My favorite always teeter-tottered between this and what my number 1 is, which you probably already know what it is at this point anyway, I would assume. That you've been keeping track of like which ones have already been entered into the list. I think it's pretty easy to guess what my number 1 would be, but Saw 2 has some really, really nice traps. I think of all the films in the franchise, this one and Part 3 and maybe Part 6 probably had the most intricate. I love the Venus flytrap. I love the syringe needle pit. I love the one where the girl, she sticks her hand in to get the antidote, and it turns out it's a razor cutting box. I thought that was pretty neat. Saw 2 had some. This one was probably the most hard. Sorry guys. This one's the hardest one to watch, probably because this one's got some really horrifying scenes in it. But this is a really good one, and I strongly recommend it. All the characters are great in this one. I didn't dislike really any. Well, I didn't not care for any of the characters in this movie. I either liked them or I hated them. I didn't feel like they were just like. I loved most of the characters. I thought. Like, I really did want to see a lot of them make it out, and unfortunately not very many did. But this is a good one. I love Donnie Wahlberg. I love him in these movies, especially Saw 2 and Saw 3. He's probably the best part about this movie. That, and you actually do see a lot more of Jigsaw in this movie. You didn't see him very much in the first one, but in Saw 2, you see him a lot. But my favorite is Saw, the first one. Because I feel like this one was more of a mystery movie. I mean, it was a pretty horrifying movie. This was the first R-rated horror film I ever saw. I saw this when I was like 12. And it was really, it was a hell of a way to start watching them. But that one had a great story, had great characters, had great deaths. Great twist ending. One of the best twist endings to a film I'd ever seen. And it had a great score to it. Or however it goes, something like that. It's more techy, more techno-ish. But Saw's my favorite. I love Danny Glover, and it was nice to see him in a horror movie. But yeah, Saw 1 is my favorite. It's a solid 10 out of 10 for me. The rest range from not. I'd give 2 and 3. I'd give like an 8 out of 10. 6, I'd give a 7 out of 10, and then the rest were just crap. Really, I recommend the first 3. these are the ones to watch. But 6 is good. I recommend that one too. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you in the comments what you'd like to see me do. I will rank the Chucky films this month, maybe even this week. So be on the lookout for that, and thank you for watching. Peace.